The following program is brought to you by Podcast One Sportsnet.
Right now, Cholula, one of America's favorite hot sauces, is teaming up with Jack in the Box for the Cholula Buttery Jack. With Cholula hot sauce, crispy jalapenos, and pepper jack cheese on a signature bun. Try it with Cholula fries. Jack, can you cool it with the guitar, please?
Sorry, just got a little excited about the burger.
Try the Cholula Buttery Jack from Jack in the Box. Part of the Buttery Jack family. Limited time only at participating restaurants. Unbelievable.
I'm done.
This episode of Steve Austin Show is sponsored in part by DDP Yoga. Working hundreds of matches over the years, it ain't no surprise that my body's taking its share of bumps and bruises. And my buddy Diamond Dallas Page knows all about the wear and tear the ring takes on your body, and his DDP Yoga fitness system was specifically designed to burn fat, reduce pain, and heal from injuries. Listen, Dallas is so positive that you'll absolutely love the DDPY program and using the DDPY app that he's doing something he ain't never done before. It's going to give you 7 days free to try it out. That's a week to try the program. Explore the app and own your life, and it's completely free. Listen, DDP Yoga can work for all ages, all weights, and all fitness levels. It's a kick-ass cardio workout that will dramatically increase your flexibility and strengthen your core like never before, all with minimal joint impact. Just for listeners of the Steve Austin Show, you can save a whopping 20% off an annual membership for the DDP Yoga Now app off any DVD pack. Just go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to get started. And if you want to experience the power of DDP Yoga in person, check out one of the upcoming DDPY Inspiration Meets Perspiration workshops in the UK for one night only, Thursday, April 19th at Frome Sport and Fitness in Somerset, England. And just announced, DDP is headed to Niagara Falls on Saturday, May 12th, at the Optimist Club of Niagara Falls from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Be sure to attend these incredible 3-hour workshops where you'll get to meet DDP, get a kick-ass workout, and hear DDP's secrets to staying motivated. Get your workshop tickets at ddpyogaworkshops.com.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California today. I just returned this very morning on Monday to Los Angeles, California, and I had a badass time hanging out there in the Bayou City, New Orleans, hanging out at the Sheraton Hotel. Went to do 2 appearances for WrestleCon and had an absolute blast meeting everybody, seeing some of the guys, hanging out with Shane Helms and Boogeyman and his crew, getting a chance to just sit down with Kenny Omega and shoot the breeze with him. We didn't do a podcast. It was just 2 cats sitting around talking about pro wrestling, and he had been working a couple of matches during the weekend. He'd been signing a lot of stuff as I had been signing a lot of stuff, and it was just one of those kind of things where you don't bust out a microphone and talk and record. You just shoot the breeze and catch up. I barely know Kenny Omega. I got a lot of respect for his work, so it was just cool to hang out with him and shoot the breeze and talk about the business, the squared circle, and things that he likes out of the business. I really enjoyed talking to him. And I got a chance to meet Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. I know he goes by a different name when he's not in Mexico, but those are 2 of my favorite guys from Lucha Underground. Got a chance to meet those guys and have some conversations with them, and that was a blast. And I ran into some people that I ain't seen in a long time, and everybody was just lights out friendly, so it was a great event. I thought all the guys and gals put forth great efforts. As you'll hear in the podcast, some of the matches really knocked it out of the park. Some were solid, and then some were just a little on the clunky side, and that's just the way it is at a big event or any event. Sometimes everybody gets off, sometimes people get off, and other people have a little bit of a struggle. Sometimes it just depends on where you are in that card and, how fresh you catch that crowd. But that crowd kind of changed about midway through that match, and they put that barn burner on with Charlotte and Asuka, and then the tag match between Kurt and Ronda and Triple H and Steph, and those are 2 lights-out matches. And after that, it kind of started draining off a little bit, and high expectations for that Shinsuke AJ match, which was okay. But anyway, we're going to break that down in the podcast as I shoot the breeze here with Court Bauer from Major League Wrestling. He's got a couple of announcements he's going to make on the podcast, but we sit here and shoot the breeze for about an hour and 20, 25 minutes or so, so I'm going to keep this open kind of short, but just say that, man, I enjoyed my trip down there. For everybody that showed up at the WrestleCon appearance, I was glad to meet you, fun to meet you, and everybody was really, really cool and polite in the line. Towards the end, right there before when WrestleMania was about to, really get going and we had to kind of rush that line, I apologize to anybody that we had to rush through there, but they did that so that y'all could get to the show on time. Next time, if there is a next time, we'll make that an earlier deal so that there's no hang-ups or hold-ups or delays to getting people to the big show, which is the WrestleMania event, in a timely fashion. But I appreciate everybody's patience, and everybody was really cool, and I had an absolute blast. And I'll tell you what, I drank a whole bunch of margaritas and a whole bunch of those damn fireballs with Shane and his folks. It was their idea to start drinking them. I didn't argue with them, but I was selling them this morning as I flew back to the main streets of Los Angeles, California. Had a good time, and I think you'll enjoy my conversation with Court Bauer from Major League Wrestling as we talk about what we thought WrestleMania 34. But before we tell you what we thought about WrestleMania 34, let me ask you, is your home an ADT home? Because mine is, and yours should be too. Get ADT and help protect against break-ins, fire, and carbon monoxide. For a limited time, take advantage of ADT's lowest rate starting at just $28.99 a month from the most trusted name in home security. Plus, ADT is the first security company to help keep you safe at home and while you're on the go with their ADT Go app, which features a family locator, safe driving reports, and even includes an SOS button with 24/7 emergency response. The best part is that you get ADT Go with the purchase of any security system. Just go to ADT.com/podcast to take advantage of ADT's lowest rate. 36-month monitoring contract required. Early termination and installation fees apply. Excludes taxes and fees. Applies to traditional services only. Certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com.
New to Podcast One, Red Circle Sports with Dennis Miller.
The thing about LeBron is I think he's reached that point now where he realizes maybe the organization, although Gilbert seems like a bit of a shaky cat to me, but I think they realize that they cannot do the full-bore ice capades every night and show the colors. They have to eat it a little once in a while because, quite frankly, it doesn't matter till it gets in the playoffs, right? Until you get in the kill zone. That takes a month and a half.
To hear new episodes each Tuesday from Dennis Miller, subscribe exclusively on Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne.com, or on the new Podcast One app. Don't forget to review and leave a 5-star rating.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
Well, it's Monday afternoon, and I ended up still in one piece and alive after about 2.5 days in New Orleans, Louisiana at WrestleMania 34. God dang, I had a blast. It was an absolute wonderful time for me. Did 2 appearances, met a couple thousand people, and had a blast. And now I figured to call Court Bauer from Major League Wrestling to kind of hash over the card, talk about some of the results, some of the storylines, some of the ramifications of some of the finishes that went down. There were just a couple of interesting things that did go down, but there was also a couple of stellar matches. And so anyway, if I sound a little haggard, it's because I am haggard. Last night I was in a hotel room with Shane Helms and a couple of his friends. Well, they were in my hotel room, and I couldn't get rid of their ass. So I just got back to L.A. today, and Court, the East Coast correspondent, is out there around the New York City area. Court, how are you? And how did you survive your WrestleMania 34 weekend in one piece?
I did pretty good. It sounds like you had a rough time down in New Orleans. I can't believe you called me this morning. It must have been about 8:30 New York time, which would have been about 7:30 New Orleans time, but you went to bed late. I don't know how you were up so early.
Man, I just I had a flight. Wasn't going to miss my flight, and I came in there on Friday and signed a bunch of pictures. And I tell you what, one thing led to another, and that's always the way it is when you go down to WrestleMania. I told my wife, I said, man, I'm just going to keep a low profile, take it easy. And it turns out I was in a room signing some pictures, getting ready for my appearances. And, right towards the end of it, because I maintained my professionalism, they started finally bringing in some margaritas. Man, it was like an endless supply of margaritas. That next day, when I woke up to go do my next appearance, I was like, holy smokes. I poured about a whole bottle of Izine in my eyes and went down there. And it was probably the best acting performance I've ever done, because I was hung over like a son of a gun, but weathered the storm. And then, of course, after that, we wanted to watch WrestleMania. And I was real excited to do that. So I took my laptop computer down there to the lobby of the hotel we were staying at. And one of the guys, it was me and Shane Helms and his wife or girlfriend and Boogeyman and a couple of other people started gathering around from different companies, some New Japan people. We were all watching the pay-per-view on my laptop, and one of the guys comes down from the technology department of the Sheraton and said, hey, I can, run a USB cord and hook it up to the big screen if you want. Hell, go ahead. So they hooked it up down there, and then Shane kept ordering rounds of fireballs and stuff like that. So by the time the event was over, and then we went back to my room for a couple of nightcaps. It was a hell of a weekend, man. There was a good energy there in the town. All the people, all the fans were really, really nice. At the appearances, also everybody was really, really cool, and the people ran a tight ship as far as the operation goes. But I really enjoyed the event. Now, there was a couple of matches where, hell, I had to make a run to the bathroom. There was a couple of during one match, they were sitting there hooking up the computer, so I missed a little bit of it, but I saw the most of it, and I really saw the matches that I wanted to see. But I know you were there, and you saw pretty much the whole thing. I missed the Andre the Giant Battle Royal on the kickoff show, the women's Battle Royal, the kickoff show, Cedric Alexander versus Mustafa Ali for the Cruiserweight Championship, and I missed the Usos, New Day, and Bludgeon Brothers. So bring us in on some of that stuff and the vibe that you thought. It was 78,000 plus people there. It was an awesome crowd, about a $14 million gate, huge day at the office as far as business goes. So how did the kickoff matches go, in your opinion? Because sometimes these battle royals can be real clustermucks.
Listen, in terms of a 7-hour product presentation of a major show, super show, I thought they did a hell of a job. And like you said, the gate was phenomenal. The staging looked great, very festive. The talent really brought it. The wrestlers, they did a hell of a job. They really elevated themselves in the process of some of these matches. And I thought it was interesting that on the pre-show, they did the 30-man battle royal for the Andre the Giant Memorial Trophy. And the crowd, man, the Superdome was pretty full. Usually for the pre-show, it's kind of like a boxing or UFC prelim where there are not many there, just diehard fans that will watch everything. This place was packed. They came ready for Mania. New Orleans and everyone flying in from around the world were ready for a big show, and they were all in for the first match, which Matt Hardy won, eliminating Baron Corbin in the last sequence of the match. And that was an interesting match. You had Bray Wyatt make a cameo there, and listen, it's a way to get everyone on the roster on the show, and I think that's good for morale. It's good for business, and for fans, they get as much star power as you possibly can get in one night. And from there, you had Cedric Alexander, the second match in the tournament finals, defeat Mustafa Ali for the Cruiserweight Championship. I thought it was a good match. Cedric Alexander's a great talent that I thought for years and years just was waiting for that rocket to boost him up to the rarefied air of being a champion in a big company, and now he's that, and he's going to be anchoring 205 Live.
Let's go back for a second to the Battle Royal that Matt Hardy won, because I love the woken gimmick, broken gimmick, whatever it is, because I like the fact that Matt Hardy, after all these years in the business, came out with this character and he sticks to it. And so then what do you figure future plans are for him? More figured in? Because, he's not the biggest guy in the world to go out there, and obviously Baron Corbin won it last year, and they've been kind of pushing him as a big guy. He's still, with the amount of years he's been in the business, I'm not knocking him, but he still has a ways to go. He hadn't really connected with the people yet. But a guy who's kind of not undersized, but not the biggest guy in the world, in Matt Hardy. And on up there, as far as years, he's still got a couple years left in him, but he wins the event. Will they put a rocket on his back or try to push him, or do some more of those character-based vignettes and stuff like that?
I think you gotta get a little bit of everything. I think he needs those character-driven vignettes to kind of be the engine that moves the machine down the road for Matt Hardy and this persona. Bell to bell, he's good, but those vignettes really make him whole. So you got to balance both and not do too much of one. Do both. I'm curious to see what they do with his brother coming back in soon. Also with Bray Wyatt in there. Bray Wyatt somehow being involved with this broken Matt Hardy world might be something fresh and new for him. How far they would take that, I don't know. We'll see.
He needed something fresh and new because,
yes,
he
absolutely.
kind of, was on fire there for a couple of years and then just kind of tailed off for some reason. I don't know whether it was just creative flow. Everybody was beating him. The promos were lasting too long and it was just too much. You give enough, a guy enough rope and he'll hang himself. And, that's not really on him, but sometimes those promos didn't seem to have a point over the course of a few years. And it's kind of like, okay, this guy come out here and he's wonderful at the gimmick, but sometimes too much is just too much and it ends up just kind of being diluted. I thought he kind of got a little bit diluted, but that match they had a couple of months ago, Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt, a lot of people didn't like the in-ring action. I actually loved that match because it was a match between two characters, strong characters. So I like those two together, or I at least like them, interacting with each other because I think they're good for each other.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good talent in this Battle Royal. Goldust was in there. You had Ziggler in there. A lot of good talent, and so it really shows the depth when you see how many dudes have been in this. I was hoping for some sort of cameo appearance they've had in past years. Guys like Shaq in there. I wouldn't mind a football player. Probably a New Orleans Saint would have been nice, but I didn't have that in this one. But again, it's a way to get everyone on that card. And at the end, I was okay with that finish. It's weird. What does the Andre the Giant memorial truly mean? Is it just a gimmick just to kick off the show that has some meaning or not? Originally when they did it the first year, the hope was that it was going to be kind of anointing a new talent or a talent to shoot to the moon in the aftermath of WrestleMania, and that was the hope with Cesaro, and maybe the intent initially. But now it seems like it means a bit less. It's nice to have something to hold in your hand and say you won it at WrestleMania, but it kind of lives and dies that day.
I agree with what you're saying, because what does it really mean? Yeah, you win the Battle Royal, but it almost, like you said, it was positioned. It's almost kind of like something almost like King of the Ring, where if you win King of the Ring, you're going to get a shove. Okay, you win this Battle Royal, there's a platform to warrant a shove. And doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So it's out there. It's a way to get a lot of bodies, a lot of guys, gals involved, in WrestleMania to be able to make an appearance for the numbers involved for the two matches. But at the end of the day, what does it really mean? And then, as far as the women's Battle Royal, I heard the action was probably even better than the guys in there. Who ended up winning that?
Naomi won it after surprising everyone. I don't think anyone knew. They did the old deal where you didn't know she was still in the match, and she snuck in when you thought that Bayley had won it, which got a good pop, and then Naomi eliminated her and won it, and that got a good pop too. It was interesting representation.
Okay, so then it was Bayley beside herself after that? Do you see a heel turn coming for her, or was it just a surprise ending and then Naomi was able to win?
It was more of a surprise ending. I mean, it was interesting just looking at the list of talent. They actually left off some of the women they probably could have put in this thing, but you had some good star power. You look at Bayley was in this, Becky Lynch, Carmella, who, of course, had the Money in the Bank briefcase, Liv Morgan, Lana, Mickie James, Mandy Rose, Naomi, Natalya. I mean, it was a who's who and some prospects as well. So the Brazilian Conti, she's an interesting project that they have. So we'll see where they go with it, but it was a nice way of it's hard to do two type of similar matches on the show, even though you have men and women doing it, like the Rumbles this year. It's a hard thing to put on a show, but again, it accomplishes a lot. It gets you more star power in the show, and it's a good thing for morale, and everyone gets to be on the biggest show of the year for WWE. I'm wondering where they go with Naomi and Bayley moving forward. I would think that there's some sort of conflict. And what do you do with Bayley? Because she's kind of been flat for a while because of how she's been presented. Do they turn her heel? I know that's something that's been debated.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, if it was not last week, she had some good interaction just in the confines of what was a tag match or something, but her and Sasha kind of turned on each other. And anytime I see those two doing business, I don't know whether it's going to be a Bayley heel turn, and I love Sasha as a heel. So, but there's just, I just love Bayley as a performer, as a character. So I just like to see some clear direction for her and to move forward and give her a green light shove and see what happens with her. So we'll see what happens out of that.
Yeah, they certainly have some great talent on both brands for their women's divisions, and that's, I mean, when you can say, listen, we're looking at maybe changing things up and freshening up Bayley, that's not a bad thing necessarily. Maybe the office will see her differently as a heel. She's been a babyface her whole run, be it NXT or WWE. So what would she be like as a heel? We might find out soon.
Shoot, did the main card then the main card started, right?
Yep, you kicked into high gear with Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor versus The Miz, who was the champion, triple threat for the Intercontinental Championship. And it was a weird thing where The Miz comes out and he tells his entourage to stay back. He's going to take this on mano y mano. And it was weird only because that's such a kind of a move a heel wouldn't do. And it kind of sent mixed signals. Why are we doing this? And I thought there'd be some sort of payoff with that, but that was a good match. Seth Rollins came out with these weird, funky blue contact lenses, which were kind of distracting. I didn't know what they were supposed to be about, but a little trying to dress himself up for Mania. It's all good. And they had a good match. They had a pretty good match, Finn Balor and The Miz, and Rollins taking the belt just after 15-minute mark. Always nice to see a good good technical match kick off the formal, proper Mania card. And I think these guys did a pretty solid job. But the match that followed that, Charlotte Flair versus Asuka, I want to talk about at length.
But before we talk about that match, I want to go back to that triple threat because, man, I always hated being in triple threats. I only worked a couple of them, but I thought all three guys did a great job of working this match. And, you know, man, like I've kind of been noticing Seth Rollins kind of really started breaking out again and gaining traction and getting his mojo back and getting back in a rhythm and a groove. And so I was happy for, you know, the way Seth's come around after that injury. It took him a while. He kind of got lost a little bit and he found his way. Finn has really started, you know, gaining more confidence. He's going out there, he gets great responses. He's a tremendous worker. And The Miz has been fantastic as the IC champion with the promos, his entertainment abilities. And so, you know, had he won this title, you know, it could have, you know, parlayed into, you know, he'd been the longest reigning IC champion in the history of the company. And it was time to do something with that belt or, you know, do more with The Miz and let him break the record and then drop it later. They decided to go Seth Rollins. And I was cool with that decision. I was really would have been cool with any guy, you know, getting the belt because Seth Rollins certainly earned it. If Miz would have kept it, I would have been down with that. But Finn, now he was the odd guy out because he's come so far from that injury, from that buckle bomb or buckle buster, whatever you call that thing that he was injured with a while back. So, you know, he's really stepped up and ramped up his game and has really gotten over with the people. So he could have used that belt as well. I thought it went to the right guy with Seth Rollins, but it'll be interesting to see now what they do with these three guys. Is there going to be a rematch coming back? But to start off the show, three guys, those things can really be clusters, but all guys hit on all cylinders, and it was a really good match.
It was a good technical Intercontinental title match, and I like the workhorse title being that and represented like that on Mania, the big show. And I'm really intrigued to see where they take Finn Balor going into now the new season of WWE, which is always interesting. What do you do on the flip side of Mania? And Finn Balor's a guy that I think one of the key guys, if they're going to do a superstar shake-up or shuffle, whatever they call it, basically a draft, I think Balor moving to another brand might benefit him. Has some fresh matchups, whether it's with the likes of Shinsuke Nakamura or AJ Styles. I think now more than ever, moving him onto another show would probably be beneficial and freshen things up.
Okay, now let's get to that Charlotte Flair versus Asuka for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Charlotte Flair goes out as the champion. And, you know, Charlotte's been a babyface now for quite a few months. And I really like her as a heel. phenomenal. It's almost like, Ric Flair. I know Charlotte's working in her own path, and I'm sure, she's very proud to be the daughter of Ric Flair, but she has her own career and is trying to forge her own way. But just for some reason, I love her as a heel more as a baby. I just think she's more natural in that role. But nonetheless, whether heel, baby, whatever, this match to me was probably the best match that I've ever seen Charlotte have. And Asuka is just so physical, so talented, so her timing is impeccable. She's so aggressive. This is one of my favorite matches. This and the Ronda Rousey, Triple H, Kurt Angle, Stephanie match. As far as a big time match with all the bells and whistles, that was just like a show stealer. But this match right here, as far as pure wrestling, badass psychology, the intensity level was off the charts. There wasn't any of that ABC 1, 2, 3 kind of prefab stuff where you see them clunking through some sequences that they would have liked to do. It was a tight match, and I was watching this match with Shane. A lot of discombobulation going on in the lobby. But when this match started, and there weren't too many people in the bar because everybody was at Mania, and we only set the TV up for us to watch it, but almost everybody in that damn match got involved in that match because it was so physical and so damn good. And I love the finish, absolutely love the finish. And a lot of people had a problem with the finish because they say, well, golly, what are you going to do with Asuka now? Well, Jesus Christ, what she had the belt for, 3 years? So yeah, you could have left it on her, but I mean, then what would you have done with Charlotte? She needed something now, because of the babyface run and just her performance in the match. Hands down, I absolutely love this match. What were your thoughts on it?
Two things. One, I think WWE missed a huge opportunity to cut away to your hotel bar and see you cracking open some beers, Hurricane Helms with his cape, and the Boogeyman eating worms, watching this match. I wanted to be a part of that. You could have sold tickets, probably had a big box office in that hotel bar, just watching this with your gimmick crowd there. Jesus.
We may do tremendous. This next year, the fireballs. Every time, I damn near every 5 minutes there was a round of fireballs coming to the table, and we were having a good time. But give me your thoughts on this match, because I know, like I said, I was having a couple of drinks, but I was really focused on this match because I really love both these women as far as what they can do in the ring. And they put on a freaking clinic.
Big money match. Some guys know what that is. Some guys can actually do it. They executed a big money match. It was only 13 minutes and change, but the poise they both showed just before the bell rang to set the vibe for the match, the tone for the match in that big arena, that big stadium, and they projected big, is not as easy as it sounds to pull off. That's hard. Then the match mechanically was phenomenal. The story they told was great. The athleticism was phenomenal. And working a match and at such a high level in terms of athleticism that they did was really impressive, because if you look at the size difference between Charlotte and Asuka, it's considerable. So some of those spots that they were going to do could have looked really funky and clunky. It didn't. It looked great. They were very fluid. This was probably my favorite match on the show. I wish they had gotten more time. To me, it's the match when I think about WrestleMania 34. That's the match that will stick out, probably along with Ronda Rousey's debut, because it was, that's a big showy match. But I was really, really enjoying that match, and I could have seen more of it. Bartender hit me with a rematch of that. Loved it. Loved some of the sequences they did. I loved the high spot they did where Asuka caught her in I think an arm bar off the top rope in a
moonsault.
Yeah, it was really
absolutely insane. And she just looked like a Venus flytrap. She just grabbed her, and I was like, holy smokes, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like, okay, like you said, the prefab thing, or okay, let's go to that spot. It was so quick, sudden, and flawless. Perfect execution by Asuka there. And listen, it's a big stage. If you're going to get that L, and Asuka has been undefeated dating back to her debut in NXT, going all the way through to the main roster, this was a good match, good stage for you to do that. I mean, it wasn't a random Monday Night Raw. It wasn't a B show. It was WrestleMania 34, a meaningful stage to do it. And like you said, you have this champion. You have to feed. You got to feed the champion. Charlotte is the priority. You got to assume, looking down the road, the flip side of WrestleMania, the new season starting. Well, what is one of the key tentpoles and the milestones for the champion run? You got to think that at some point there's a big money match with Rowdy Ronda Rousey. And so that's where I think they're building. Keep building that, keep feeding that champion. You're going to have a big money match, maybe at SummerSlam, maybe Rumble, Survivor Series, soon.
Man, and maybe too soon for that, but nonetheless, whether it's Charlotte or it's Asuka, those would be both great opponents for Ronda Rousey.
Absolutely.
Whenever she's ready for that level of competition. And the things that, just from the body types of, Charlotte's a tall, lean, she's a physical specimen. She's built to be a pro wrestler. She really is. She has that type of physique. Asuka, on the other hand, is a little bit more compact, but just tough as nails, and is also built for the business as well, just because of how tough she is. And so I just love the match. And going into the finish, I mean, after, what's that finish called? It's a figure eight.
Yes.
Okay, but when she got that thing, and all of a sudden Asuka started tapping, the roof blew off the place. Mm-hmm. And, when Charlotte got up, she was a little bit emotional. She was bruised up. She was bloody. I mean, it looked like it'd been through a damn war, and they had. And then the thing about this, talk to me and give me your opinion on this. Asuka grabs a horn and says, basically, you were ready for Asuka, or words to that effect. And then there was that big hug. Where did that leave you, and what were your thoughts on that, rather than just, hey, man, let me get out of Dodge, or, was that the classy thing to do, the babyface thing to do? What were your thoughts on how and why that went down like it did?
I like in my wrestling less handshakes and hugging.
Yeah.
I want to keep that very selective. I want to do that maybe 1 out of 20 times, 1 out of 50 times. I think there's better to have the unspoken tension. You got me this time, and leave it at that. I don't like the hugs typically, or the handshakes. I kind of rather see, we understand that this confrontation had a conclusion, but stay tuned. I don't like that. It's too sentimental for me for wrestling. But the one thing that really, that didn't bother me really as much as right as that moment is sinking in, they pivot to John Cena, who we can't forget was sitting in the crowd drinking beers, watching WrestleMania as a fan, one of the top stars in the history of the company, positioned and booked as a fan, and then he gets the word that, hey, get to the back, something about Taker, and you see him scoot to the back, and then Asuka watches this and goes, wow, look at that. After losing at WrestleMania, her undefeated streak over, it was a little awkward to me. And I'm a traditionalist. I would not want to see John Cena ever, just out of respect for his career, put in that position where he's just going to watch WrestleMania even if he doesn't have an opponent. I think there's a way to make him have elevated stature and maybe do what they were trying to accomplish with Taker in an unadvertised match. But I still don't know what the point of not advertising that match was. Even if it was a quick, short little piece of business, it was bizarre presentation. But sometimes Vince likes to experiment.
It kind of took a little bit of the tension. Asuka was standing there still in the ring, and I remember where Charlotte was. But all of a sudden, Cena goes hauling ass up the ramp, and it's just like, yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm out here. Cena just ran in. I guess I'll just go up the stage and get ready for the next match. So yeah, I would have, handed the belt over, or just some type of solemn exchange, but it was a feel-good moment, seemingly, for the crowd there at the Silver Dome, as Hogan would have said years ago. At the Superdome, I mean, they bought into it. Me, I'm kind of like you. You beat me, you're better than me tonight, or whatever. Okay, business is done, over. But I can see where they're trying to do something there. The match was so damn good, I can let that slide. But anyway, so Cena hauls ass, and before there's that match is going to happen with the Undertaker, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. But then you got the Randy Orton, who was the champion, versus Bobby Roode, and Jinder Mahal and Rusev for the United States Championship. Man, these matches are hard as hell to have. Guys worked hard. What were your thoughts on the match?
Well, again, triple threats are a little challenging. This one, Rusev, who's super over, and sometimes I feel like they don't know really how to plug him into a significant story, significant feud, and present him in a significant capacity. He did all he could. I thought the Aiden English thing is always a fun little add-on, and he's gotten himself over with limited opportunity. Jinder Mahal, you look at the last 12 months, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. Had a good run with the title, and then they switched the belt, and he kind of lost his place for a little bit. Now Now they have the belt back on him, having won the championship. I'm curious to see where they go on the flip side of this, going into, again, the new season. Also curious to see what the future of Randy Orton is. Watch this match. Orton always looks like $1 million, a great asset to the brand. I understand he's now looking at possibly going into a part-time position or less dates on the flip side of Mania. Man, losing that guy on a week-to-week basis, definitely going to hurt the depth, but in terms of having an experienced guy like that on the roster, he's a great guy to have. This match, again, they just do the constant, one guy out, two guys in. It's the oldest play to run in a triple threat, but it's the play you kind of have to run or it gets a little weird. But, another guy to look at this and see where his last few years have gone is Bobby Roode. Just not too long ago, this guy wasn't even in NXT, and now he's wrestling for the U.S. title at WrestleMania. He's had a pretty cool career, how it's turned out. Usually by this point in his career, he's about 39. 40. Guys aren't getting those big breaks. He's been able to be one of those guys that was able to make it work. Got great talent, hell of an entrance song, and he's making the most of his moment.
Yeah, he makes a great entrance, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with him. But as far as Rusev goes, because he's a guy that's starting to break out, and I don't know how Rusev Day started, but Jesus Christ, people are buying into that damn thing. In a way, I want to say just like Daniel Bryan, because Daniel Bryan's work got his ass over, and it was great to see his return, which we'll get to in a little bit. But,
right.
They're organic. Rusev is organically getting over, so they need to kind of, give him some type of concerted push or, definite direction so we see who and what or what the Rusev Day means. But people are buying into that gimmick, and if people are going to buy into that gimmick and you're not really force feeding it, there's some 411 for you if you're listening to and feeling engaging that crowd, and they like that guy because I've watched, what he does on, whether it's Southpaw Wrestling or whatever, he's a charismatic guy with a great sense of humor, and people just seem to like him.
Yeah, he has that it factor about him because he can be intense. He can be he has good timing in terms of comedy without making himself look like a clown, and he's a great athlete. And the thing with the ongoing conflict with Russia and that region should be something that you can convert into a topical issue for the show, but nonetheless they haven't. But he made Rusev Day into something. I walked around New Orleans and I saw people wearing the Rusev shirt probably more than I saw any other shirt from WWE, and you gotta say, hey, this guy's turned something that was a joke with Aiden English into a way to make money, and so this guy totally gets it. And there's been rumors that he was frustrated with his position in the company, and then he was a late add to this match. Whether that's true or not, he certainly belonged in the match, and he certainly should be on WrestleMania. Hopefully they have good designs for him going into the other end of 2018, because, man, he's a guy. I look back at 2015 WrestleMania in San Jose when he faced John Cena, and they had that big tank out there and a big badass entrance. And then he got beat by Cena, and then he kind of lost some steam since then. And until recently with the Rusev Day thing, he kind of just been a great guy to get a win over, but nothing of great significance. Man, this is a guy that he easily could be a world champion. No doubt about it. He checks all the boxes. He can be a big-time main eventer. He can go, and he can connect with that audience.
Well, before we get to the Kurt Angle, Ronda Rousey, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon match, before I take a break, I know you've got a couple of things you want to talk about before we take a break. So
sure.
At this time, please take the time to give some 411 to what you got going on.
Sure. Well, we're talking a lot about wrestling, and there's a new wrestling TV series hitting you nationwide here in America on BN Sports starting April 20th, 8 p.m. That's next Friday, 8 p.m. on BN Sports, as Major League Wrestling, my company, is premiering at 8 o'clock each and every week with Major League Wrestling Fusion, and you can learn a lot more about it at MLW.com. Tony Schiavone returns to the broadcast booth for the first time in 17 years as he anchors the booth with Rich Bocchini, formerly Rich Brennan of NXT. You'll see a lot of stars from formerly of WWE, including MVP. You'll see guys like Low Ki. You'll see Filthy Tom Lawler, formerly currently still with the UFC. A lot of the new wave of wrestlers out there. Guys from Mexico like Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix, who you might have seen on Lucha Underground. It's a nice blend of wrestling from around the world, and it starts next Friday, April 20th at 8 p.m. on BN Sports. DVR, you can also stream it using BN Connect if you want to watch it on the go on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. And they also have it available for Roku, Sling, you name it, you got it. This channel is available across the nation on DirecTV, Dish Network, Verizon, Fios, tons of places, tons of great places to get it. And we're looking forward to bringing Major League Wrestling to the airwaves starting next week.
Man, that's awesome. Congratulations on all the hard work and success.
Now the real work begins.
All right, let's take a quick pause for the cause and give big ups to TrueCar. Here's some useful car tips you might not be aware of. Putting your floor mat under your tires in the winter can help your car get out of the snow. Removing excess weight from your car will improve gas mileage. Keeping a Dixie cup full of water in your car to put your cigarettes in is a better option than throwing them out the window. Hello. Ready for one more tip you might not know about? TrueCar also helps people get used cars. That's right. TrueCar ain't just for buying new cars. With their certified dealer network and nationwide inventory of nearly 1 million used cars, you'll enjoy real pricing on actual inventory and a simpler car buying experience, whether you buy new or used. And with TrueCar, users can see what others paid, so they know if they're getting a good deal before buying. They're also more likely to enjoy a faster buying experience by connecting with TrueCar certified dealers. When you're ready to buy a new or used car, check out TrueCar and enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Some features not available in all states. You're also going to need car insurance for that new vehicle. Go to Geico.com and in 15 minutes, you could be saving 15% or more on car insurance. That's right. Save hundreds of dollars on car insurance at Geico.com. Extra money in your pocket may just be the most rewarding thing you do today.
I never thought I'd get to cast a spell in Hogsmeade. I never knew what 120 miles per hour felt like until Fast and Furious Supercharged. I never thought coming face to face with a hungry T-Rex would make my dad scream so loud.
And I have never felt more scared or alive. If you haven't been to Universal Studios Hollywood lately, come see what you've been missing. Plan your visit online and save at universalstudioshollywood.com. Restrictions apply.
What's it like for you watching games of your son coaching?
Agonizing.
It's a family affair on Attack Each Day, the Harbaugh's podcast.
You know, I didn't know there was actual work here.
Recent guests include Rich Eisen, John Harbaugh, Judge Judy, and John Madden.
I thought one of the greatest jobs in coaching in the NFL was Jim's first year with the 49ers.
Exclusively on Podcast One Sportsnet. Get episodes every Tuesday on Podcast One and Apple Podcasts.
Great time to be a Wolverine.
All right, before we get to the rest of my breakdown of WrestleMania 34 with Court Bauer, here are some words from our sponsor. Pile Driver, Hair Whip, Face Buster, Exploder, Goozle, Knee Crusher, Skull Cracker, Vertebraker, Calf Slicer, Gore, Stunner. Now, whether you're a construction worker, warehouse worker, or even a pro wrestler, if you hear certain words on a job site, it can make work painful and uncomfortable, usually for your opponent. So at least get work gear that is comfortable. Timberland Pro, work shirts, pants, and boots. Head to toe, Timberland Pro, not uncomfortable.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
All right, I'm back with Court Bauer. Holy smokes, right before we went to a break, you were talking about Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix. I got a chance, I was in the room that I was signing all the autograph stuff with. I was hanging out with Kenny Omega, had a great conversation with him. And Pentagon heard my podcast when Vampiro called him Chubby. And I knew that he was, down there at WrestleCon signing autographs. And I told the guys, I said, man, that's one of my favorite gimmicks going. Yeah. So Pentagon Jr. comes up and Phoenix comes up. And, they speak a little bit pretty good English. And so I got a chance to spend about 15 or 20 minutes and talk with those guys and Rocky down there from the New Japan Dojo. So I had a good time talking to those guys, and I absolutely love that gimmick, but I had to bring that story up. I got a chance to talk to so many people. I took my podcast stuff there, but it was just like one thing led to another, dude. And when you get kind of down in the trenches and you're signing autographs, and then when you're done, you just don't really want to talk to anybody, and you've not done any research. So I didn't get any podcasting done down there. I thought I was going to talk to like 5 or 6 guys. guys. But, man, WrestleMania weekend is so exciting, and it's just a time where if you're one of the boys and you get your work done, it's time to have a few drinks. But it was good to meet those two guys and continue success. And Pentagon, stay off the donuts. You're getting a little chubby. Hey, man, let's get back into the business. Talk about WrestleMania 34. This, obviously, like I said, and you agreed, Charlotte and Asuka was just off the charts. That was a badass pro wrestling match. And this one, the next match we're going to talk about, was a big-time wrestling match with all the bells and whistles, the storyline. We've got the newcomer from an outside world of MMA, UFC superstar, one of the baddest women on the planet, Ronda Rousey, making her in-ring debut. And her partner is Kurt Angle. And obviously they're taking on Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. And this was such an entertaining match, and I was really wondering how Ronda would handle the moment. Some people have questioned some of her, interview skills, and, she's not used to being on an RF mic in front of 20,000 people in these arenas. Mostly it's, trash talk and sound bites and stuff like that in a shoot aspect. So now following storyline stuff, I was wondering, would the moment be too great for her? And this match was so damn entertaining. We were down there at the bar, and when I'm seeing really good stuff and I'm really enjoying myself and I'm just intrigued by the storyline, all the way they're moving the chess pieces on the board, I was laughing my ass off just because, when she got Triple H into the corner, just started wailing on him. And, Triple H takes one of the best ass whippings in a corner, and all the teases, all the shenanigans. I love the one spot where Ronda was laid, face down in the mat, and there's Triple H out on the floor, and he's kind of thinking about it, and you never see it happen, and he just, pulls her from the ring, and she just goes splat, pancakes down on the rubber mat down there. There were so many things that happened. The chase around the ring where, Steph clearly baited her, and there they go back into the ring. There were so many twists and turns and, submission type moves, and right when you thought, okay, here's the finish, they extended it. That wasn't the finish, and the crowd bought into this. It started off just a tad slow. People were wondering, I think, just like I did, but boom, they set the hook and missed her damn near from the bell. It was on, and just that crowd, everybody there was into that match, and there at the hotel, like I said, had the TV playing. We weren't playing it for everybody. There's probably 30, 40 people there in the bar. Everybody, once Ronda and these guys came in there and started telling their story, that whole bar was cheering for the ups and downs of that match, and they weren't even wrestling fans. So it was just amazing to me, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and we got to rewind because shout out to everyone over at WWE Studios for putting together that phenomenal package for Ronda and Kurt versus Stephanie and Hunter. Phenomenal package. They do such a great job of telling the story. If you just dip in for WrestleMania and don't watch anything else, you are up to speed and you got everything that was going on. If you're a fan and you watch it all the time, it still was a really entertaining package that told a great story going into the match that gets you salivating for the special attraction. So that's the art of showcasing these big time matches, is setting the table, and WWE does a great job with their video packages they put together. Phenomenal. I thought this one was a really interesting match. Kurt Angle, Ronda Rousey, good team up, two Olympians. And Ronda Rousey, you watched her athletically. She really does have the Olympic pedigree in her. You can see it. Just her athleticism, her timing, how quickly she took to wrestling, similarly to Kurt Angle. You saw that rolling clothesline she did, a la Conan. It was tremendous. A really good clothesline sequence she did there. And she had poise. She didn't seem like the moment, like you said, eclipsed her. It was a big moment. Now, I will say, her coming out and smiling for a big fight felt weird. I know that's just the WWE way. You got to smile, but I missed the mean face Ronda, but I guess, it's a different time, different presentation, so you got to go with the way the product takes you. I also wish they had Judo Gene LaBelle with his stopwatch going down there, but I guess it would be that's a little bit of a stretch, but I love Judo Gene LaBelle. He was phenomenal as one of her cornermen back in the UFC days. But this was a great match. It really was. I thought she was going to tap Hunter. I really thought they were going to do that.
I did too.
I was like, oh, here they go. They're going to do it. And I'm thinking instantly, that's a huge ESPN Sports Center moment if you do that. That doesn't get any bigger than seeing her tap out a dude. And they did a few what I would consider great near falls on that one, and really had me convinced that was the finish, and it wasn't. And the finish really was good.
And there was that one moment, and I forget what the lineup was, but two people were down, or was everybody in the submission hold? But then Kurt makes a save. But anyway, basically there's almost a tackle between Kurt and Ronda, and all of a sudden then there's a double down or almost a quadruple down. I'm like, okay, now where are they going from here? And that was really effective. And I was like, holy smokes, what are they going to end up doing? Going back to what you said, when she came out smiling, she looked like $1,000,000. I love the plaid skirt. And then she came out, she had her gear on. Yeah. And then it was time. I think, she got her game face on at that point, but I know where that came from. I'll guarantee you, that was straight out of the old man. Yep. Go out there and smile because, we know she's a badass. She got that mean mug face when it's time to throw down and do business. And there was plenty of opportunities, and that did happen during the course of the match. But yeah, it felt a little weird to me too. But I think that he wanted her to smile just to be accessible, and maybe to calm the nerves, or maybe she's more free when she's focused, and is that laser focus that she has. But I didn't expect her to smile. But I mean, it was her first big performance in front of 78,000 people. So some people were like knocking her for it. Hey, I could go either way on it. I just know that once the bell rang, I was watching her body language, trying to hang on to that tag rope, because when you're watching, all of a sudden everything that, maybe they practiced, well, for sure they did, doing it in a gym or somewhere, in a WWE facility, or there where they have the rings there at the hotel. And all of a sudden, you're out there in front of 78,000 people, and you're holding on that tag rope, and all of a sudden, okay, I'm supposed to do this, but I thought maybe I'm supposed to do this first, and you can get lost in the moment very easy. She did not. Obviously, they put a lot of time into this. She's obviously a very talented person. And you had three hands in there with Kurt, Steph, and Triple H being able to help out along with the referee. So all the pieces were set in place for this to be, and this thing was built to make all of them shine, but specifically Ronda, and help get her over. And yeah, this one, I thought they knocked a grand slam. The bases were loaded, and they knocked it out of the park. And so we'll see what happens, in the future when she starts moving into single endeavors, tag team endeavors. This was great, and they pulled it off. So she still has work to do, but as far as her performance goes, I give her an A+, and I give the match an A+, because that's how entertained I was by it.
Absolutely. Like I said, real good poise, confident in there. She's been training for a while. I'd seen highlights of her from the gym when she was training out with Spanky out in L.A., Brian Kendrick. And this was from last August. Wow, she looked ready to go then. I mean, she really has taken this like a fish in water. It was a really, really good first outing for her. And I think she's going to be a hell of a get for WWE moving forward in 2018. Whether you have Brock Lesnar there or not, she's a great, fresh, special attraction that I think will be great for the women's division, great for WWE's product, and great for getting new fans or fans of Ronda Rousey that now will see her, take the next step. There's a lot of things you can do with Ronda, and a lot of business you can get into with Ronda, not just in the ring. You look at what they do with the E! Network Total Divas show. You could do a whole show just on Ronda. It's endless possibilities for Ronda Rousey and WWE, and I think you got to grade her with a high grade on her first match. Really good job. She's in there with some great talent too, but you can see she was holding her own. This wasn't like this wasn't a match like the old WrestleMania 11 match with Bam Bam and LT, where you could see they really carefully constructed a match and trying to make the most out of something with someone that was very green. She's put in the time, and she's all in. She's not just collecting a check. She's yes, collecting a check, but she's in there. She's passionate about the business, which means a lot. And I will say this: it was cool to see the nod to Roddy Piper with the kilt that she wore, with the similar leather jacket with the diamond design on the shoulders, and it was a nice nod. And the other thing is for the entrances, we should mention that there were some really funky entrances and some cool stuff they did. WWE's production is on a different level. They did this like 3D entrance for the viewers at home, and you got to see, like, for New Day's entrance, all this motion of pancakes and different things happening during the entrance set that weren't there, I don't believe, live. And it just created a different level of presentation. Again, just they up their game every year, and Kevin Dunn and his team really set the bar pretty damn high. So my hat goes off to them too, because that was a great set.
Yeah, it was. And one last thought as far as Ronda goes. I mean, she was been in so many big time fights when she was full time with UFC and MMA world. And I don't know how fighters feel, once they come out of a match. She won so many in such dominating fashion in such short time. I'm sure she wasn't physically hurt, but what's the adrenaline rush? Obviously, it's super high.
Yeah.
So now coming into the world of professional wrestling, sports entertainment, and you go out there and you do everything that you did, everything goes according to plan. I just wonder how jacked up and how much adrenaline, because, when you rip it up and you've got 78,000 there, and then, of course, when you go backstage, I guarantee you they got to stand and O, because that's how good that match was, and it was just amazing. So I wonder what her emotions were, because I know she's humble to be there. I know she's always been a fan. I know she wants to work to be, accepted, and, she's already given, this huge push because of who she is and her background and her past and competitive athletics with judo and MMA. So I just wonder where she was in her head and what it meant to her. And does she know the enormity of what she was able to accomplish that night and how satisfied she was?
Well, the athlete like that, they keep raising the bar, and I'm sure she's a perfectionist and saw other things that she could have done maybe differently or executed. But she's got to feel comfortable. She's got to feel confident now moving forward. There's got to be no doubt in her mind that this is going to work out great, at least in terms of performance in the ring. She's got it, and I'm really curious to see what they do moving forward with her coming out of this. I mean, you still have a one-on match with Stephanie. That's an obvious layup. You can do that, and I think it would be a fine match. You could, again, have her go down that road to chase the title, but I don't want to see her chasing it right away. I'd like to see that on the back end of the year, if not 2019. But she's a great get for them. I wish they had done that even maybe 6 months earlier, but you wanted her to be ready for it. And WrestleMania is when you do something big like this. Also worth noting that Dana White, flying back from the East Coast after a wild few days with everything going on with Conor McGregor and everything, was sitting front row, big smile on his face, very supportive of her, wearing a Ronda Rousey WWE sweatshirt hoodie, and out there supporting her for her match. It was cool to see Dana White there. I was surprised to see him there.
It was really cool to see him there, and also for him to be able to do. Dana White ain't no dummy. He might not know pro wrestling, but he knows a crowd when he hears one. And the way the crowd would bought into that match, and she was hitting on all cylinders as everybody in the match was, for her to make this next step in her life. And I know they're probably very, very close friends, and they've done so much big, big business together. And I don't know if Dana White is a pro wrestling fan per se, but he certainly had to be proud and maybe even amazed at, the response that, UFC, they're doing some things better than, the WWF does these days sometimes with the organic nature of the promo stuff. But then with the controlled aspect of what goes on in WWE, when you hit on all cylinders and knock it out of the park, he had to be real proud of her.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing that I recall, one of the first times I ever met Dana White was when UFC used to run. This is before they had TV. This is like late 2004. They were running Atlantic City, and I actually had an opportunity to hang with him after the fights. He had like he had like a penthouse or suite at the casino in Atlantic City, and he was holding court because they were kind of getting ready to make a big run and try to do some TV of that last Hail Mary, which ended up being the Spike run. And so they had a lot of media in there and a lot of friends and from the East Coast, and I happened to talk to him about wrestling. And he actually grew up in Boston, as everyone knows, but he was a fan of that old, I want to say mid to early 80s wrestling. Like, he knew the old WWF guys, Strongbow, those guys. And he liked them, and he just, he gravitated towards boxing, so that's where he went. But he always had a respect for wrestling. He never looked down on it. And of course, there's like that kindred spirit thing with Vince, where I think, very few people have walked in their steps and know what it's like to have that job at that high level and run an operation and build an empire and be front and center for it, and the 24/7, 365 grind that it is. And I think that's why there's always been a mutual respect there. They've never been at war. Very few people can relate to those kind of guys. They're wired differently, but there's a lot of similarities. But it was cool nonetheless to see him front and center for the match. It kind of made the match to me feel bigger to see someone like that there that I had no idea would be there. Maybe he was going to have a conversation with Brock. We'll get to that in a little bit.
You got it. Hey, let's move on to the Usos versus New Day versus the Bludgeon Brothers for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. And I'm not going to lie, I went to go get a round of Fireballs. And, dude, by the time I was waiting in line, by the time I returned back with the drinks, the match was over. So these guys didn't get a whole lot of time, or they got cut short. What were your impressions of the match? And I do love the way they've kind of, for Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, for these guys to get repackaged and get a little bit of a rocket strapped to them. I'm happy for these guys.
Well, we can't lose sight of the fact that the WWE had a World Tag Team Championship match as part of the main show for WrestleMania. That's something that's been missing, and I hate that. As a traditionalist, I want to see the tag team championships represented. They should be meaningful belts, and you didn't have it just once. We had it twice, and we'll get to the second one a little later, but I thought it was great to have the belts represented on the main show. That's something that I think a lot of people have overlooked. You got more talent on the show, and I got some interesting matchups, and the Bludgeon Brothers, Harper and Rowan, these guys I think are going to be a great big man attraction for WWE. I think they're going to be – it's something different too. I mean, you've gone back and forth how many times with New Day and Usos? You gotta do something else. Got to do something different. And I think this is the time to give them the belts. And you got two big dudes that you can easily make either of them. You can make an argument that they could, be champions, but they also can be top stars while champions as singles acts, especially Harper, who's just phenomenal, and Rowan's come a bit of a way too. But this was the right move, right call. Match only went 5 minutes, 50 seconds. Short but sweet, but like you said, just enough to go do a beer run.
So what happened? Do you think they pulled their time? Because seemingly they had to. They're not going to say, hey, man, with entrances, you got your entrances and then you got 6 minutes to work. So somebody got cut short there.
Yeah, well, you also got to remember, this WrestleMania, while they have unlimited time, they also built in this WrestleMania more ad time, more promotion for their content, for their sponsors, their partners, than they have any prior WrestleMania. So the show goes 7 hours, and this show moved throughout most of the night. You could make probably an argument that it probably peaked possibly with either the Daniel Bryan tag match and his comeback or the Kurt Angle Ronda Rousey match. Regardless, you're going to have to shave time. This is this happens every week from every company. Just times are, you're looking at that time, you know how much you need for ad time, and you can't shorten a commercial. You can't cheat a commercial, so you can have to look at a match and cheat it. And that's the other thing you have to remember is those are some long ass entrances. So it's like you're going to eat up a lot of time just walking to the ring, even if you're doing it at a quick pace. You're going to eat up time doing that alone.
God dang, dude, what'd you think about John Cena versus The Undertaker? This didn't go long.
No, 2 minutes, 45 seconds, and it was a strange ending to a strange build to a WrestleMania match. I'm sure Undertaker was possibly apprehensive about doing a big money match. As every year passes, it gets harder to pull that off, no matter how great you are. And Taker's obviously one of the all-time greats. So you want to protect the legacy, but you also want the star power in the show. This was a creative compromise of sorts, so you try to get everything accomplished. I probably would have elected to not do this, but I understand the reasons behind doing it. It's a tricky one. Curious that they beat John Cena, given that he is a little bit more present on the TV shows, given that he has a huge Hollywood run underway, and he's really crossed over the mainstream. I don't know why the finish was what it was, but Taker got this win in under 3 minutes.
Yeah, it was a little shocking to me with Cena calling him out for so long, and like I said, with basically it was an unadvertised match. I mean, Cena's trying to call out, and I kept thinking, there's no way that he's going to get an acceptance on the day of. So, yeah, it was teased, and they paid off the tease, but it wasn't really advertised. So, nonetheless, I guess the crowd felt like they got a bonus, but in that bonus was a very short match where Cena got squashed. So, again, I got nothing respect for both guys. Taker's been around forever. He has had one of the best runs in the history of the business. So has John Cena. Just, man. And had it been a 15-minute bing, bang, boom thing, I don't know that that's what they needed. But it just seemed like maybe if Cena would have got a little bit more offense into that tombstone, then do the favors, maybe it would have been a little bit more effective. But it was what it was. And, and I don't know how Taker's feeling on a physical level. He looked phenomenal. And he's one of the toughest guys, I think, in the business. But Cena, is probably moving on to do other things with movies and series and, endorsements and stuff like that. But continues to be an ambassador for the company and, a guy with a great attitude and not afraid to put somebody over. And so I respect him for that.
I would say probably 10 out of 10 top-level main event guys over the history of the WWE. They're big. If you're Mount Rushmore of WWE top baby faces, would have passed on that match, and especially that finish in that window of time to do the honors. But that's why John Cena is the exception to that rule. He's been that guy for Vince, and he's been his steady guy for now basically 14 years or so. That he won't walk out on over a payday, a finish, et cetera, et cetera. He's that guy that Vince has always been looking for. That is, like you said, the quintessential team player, company guy. Maybe to his own detriment, but clearly his talents and his star presence are resilient. But I would have done it a little differently. Would have even done a non-finish. I probably wouldn't have done the match myself, but they loaded up with star power and they got what they got out of it. And it was a quickie. But again, right after that Ronda match, things started to feel a little funky. You had this short match, which was a weird match. But then things would pick up again with Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Hard to believe that we got Daniel Bryan in his comeback in the same place where he kind of had his big breakout, WrestleMania 30, when the crowd just went crazy for him and refused to accept his position as anything lesser than a top star just 4 years ago. Here he is making his comeback. The weird thing for me on this match, I wanted to get your take, is Daniel Bryan, given the conditions in which led to his retirement, I thought his style would be a bit different. I thought he would make a lot of adjustments. Man, he went all in, and it was the classic Daniel Bryan, more or less, maybe a spot or two not there that we'd seen in the past. But in general, it was classic Daniel Bryan. Were you surprised to see him not change his style?
Well, I was surprised with the one missile drop kick, but it did look like he'd kind of, I want to say, floated down, but took just a little bit different trajectory. So it was a little bit more of a flat back than being on the back of his head. He sold that now, but then he kept up to show that he was okay, and then went about his business. I really enjoyed this match. It was a hard-fought match, and of course, they take Daniel Bryan out of it for a little bit. Shane does work. And, I love KO as a heel, and I'm so happy to see Sami Zayn starting to get featured, for a while. I mean, he was just kind of lost and just he's a guy who's been around for a long time. And so I love to see him in a dedicated role as a heel with some, with the attitude that he's got. He can work his ass off. I'm glad to see him in a mix. A couple of years ago, I was talking about when Shinsuke came in and they had that 50-50 match, which was a good match. I wanted to see Shinsuke take more of that match too, because at that time they were trying to get him over. So, I thought Sammy should have had less in that match. But in this role now, he's starting to be a featured guy. I'm so happy to see Sami Zayn because it's well deserved, because he's been around the horn a long time. So he can work his ass off, and he's really getting into the character-based stuff now. So I enjoyed the match. I didn't know what Daniel Bryan was going to do, but when he came out there, dude, and he started going through that comeback, and when he got that hot tag, and he slow played the way he stepped into that ring rather than coming in a house of fire, and it was almost like a scene from the Old West. It'll really let those people buy in, and all of a sudden, then he goes to work doing all of his trademark stuff. And Shane, you got to give Shane a lot of credit, because I don't know whether the diverticulitis stuff was a shoot, work, this, that, whatever, but Shane steps in there. He's not on the road 250 days a year, every single year, for year after year after year. So he gets in these big matches. He's over. People love to see Shane work. I thought these guys ripped it up. I thought it was a really good match, and it was great to see Daniel Bryan back. But yeah, I thought maybe he'd change up his offense a little bit. But man, when he had those guys in their turnbuckles and he's running back and forth, and I don't know whether he just kind of does that run up drop kick or whatever it's called, but it was just exciting to see him in action and to see that crowd soaking it all in. And dude, he looked like a kid in a candy store. So I was just thrilled to see him doing back what he loves to do, what he was born to do.
And you could see the genuine emotion coming across his face about halfway through the match, man. You can just see it. It was like he was fighting back almost tears. It was a very emotional moment for him. You could tell this was something he worked damn hard to get to the point of being cleared and having another shot, let alone in WWE. I think a lot of people probably projected it might happen in a New Japan ring or somewhere else, but to be in the Superdome in a big match like that, and with guys like Sami Zayn and Steen in there, great talent. And honestly, I do wonder about the Shane McMahon thing. Was it a work or was it not? I saw in the package, another great package on the match, they talked about how Shane McMahon had, when he was attacked by the heels, he had suffered diverticulitis as a result. Having suffered diverticulitis myself, I can tell you, you can't be attacked physically and get diverticulitis. It doesn't work like that. But to the average fan, not going to notice those kind of things, but just a little pop-up info on that one. But now I'm wondering where they go with the GMs moving forward. You have the GM and the commissioner. Where do you take those two characters moving forward? I mean, Daniel Bryan's obviously a guy without the need to do that gig. First of all, do you think Daniel Bryan is going to be full-time now? I would assume so, but what do you think?
Well, I would assume so. If he's been cleared, why would he not be? And so, definitely, there's a spot on the card for him. Because he was such a huge part of, before he had to ride off in the sunset because they wouldn't clear him to continue. But coming back, do you kind of just run him sporadically to keep him special or keep him fresh? He was always that workhorse breed, and that was one of the things that made the people love him so much, because he went out there and earned that stuff. And then through earning it, WWF had to push him. So on one hand, you think, okay, he's going to go back to the grind. And on the other hand, you think if you're Vince, keep him out there, in plenty of capacity, but don't overexpose him or don't force him to doing too much work until, hey, man, it's just crystal clear. I'm sure it is crystal clear if they cleared him to do this match that he can weather the storm. His body can take the punishment. He kind of modifies that style so he doesn't put himself in harm's way. And so just kind of go and see, hey, man, how you feeling? Okay, let's move another step. And, because it's not a thing of just Daniel Bryan. And he is first and foremost. It's his health along with his wife. And I love the way, he kissed his wife at the end. The arena really enjoyed that part because of his journey. But with the investment, you're concerned about Daniel Bryan's safety, but the money that the office has got to spend on television time and the whole push, you also want to make sure, even though you're concerned about Daniel Bryan, as far as the money you're spending into this, you need to get back. And so you keep pushing this cat, and all of a sudden he goes belly up again. It's like, oh, man, here we go again. that could have been somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Just from a business standpoint. I mean, and that's just the same as looking at guys in the NFL. Okay, it was great having you here for a little bit. You got to go down the road because we're going a different direction.
Yeah, you got to be careful. I'm wondering even if Shane McMahon, as looking at his role as an authority figure, will stay with SmackDown. I assume so. I mean, obviously he might have some health issues. Maybe that's a work. Who knows? You know, do you put in someone in Daniel Bryan's slot? And if so, who would you put in? A guy like Mick Foley, a new character, a lot of options. You could put a legend in there. What would you do necessarily in that? Would you just keep it just solo to Shane, or do you want to add a heel dynamic to that equation behind the scenes?
Dude, I don't know, man. I just stick to the wrestling part of it, and sticking with the wrestling part of it. Let's go to the WWE Championship match between AJ Styles, who is a champion, and Shinsuke Nakamura, because on paper, people are looking for this to be the match of the night because of AJ's one of the best workers in the world. Shinsuke can go.
Yep.
But I thought the match itself was certainly good. I think the hype was so much. I think the crowd was losing a little bit of energy, but even if it had been a fresh crowd, the match was pretty good. But the ending, you know, with AJ retaining and then Shinsuke, you know, getting on his knees, handing him that belt, dude, that ball shot at the end was phenomenal. It wasn't the hokey one where sometimes you start laughing or it's like this, that, or whatever, man. It was straight up F you. And then the whatever his finish is out there on the floor. The match was what it was. It was a means to an end, and I was thinking to myself, okay, this is the time, if you're going to make Shinsuke, this is where he takes the title from AJ. And when AJ went over, I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking in the big picture, and maybe Vince is not believing in this guy. But then after the heel turn, I'm thinking, okay, he does believe in this guy, but now he believes in him as a heel. And so either it's a fresh start in the heel capacity or just another opportunity. It's like, hey, dude, baby thing didn't work out so great. Giving you another shot as a heel. Let's see what you got here. How did you take that?
I thought it was puzzling because to me you needed a fresh matchup, and Shinsuke with the title, with a lot of the talent we've talked about, chasing the belt makes a lot of sense. Nakamura is one of their top merch sellers, whether it's collectible figures, T-shirts. You go to WWEshop.com, you'll see how he tracks. He does phenomenally well with merch. So that to me is a huge disconnect because you have metrics to see that this guy is doing well for you in terms of business. You can look at the ratings. You can, of course, more often than not, look at the performance in merch. And on top of that, you need guys to represent you in Japan in a favorable light. You had both your top Japanese stars on the biggest stage come up with goose eggs at WrestleMania. You have the WWE Network that's only been there a year or two over in Japan. You want these guys to feel like big-time winners. And like I said, you can, of course, say, well, they're at WrestleMania. That makes them big-time winners. Sure. But to me, this was the time to make Nakamura champ. I disagree with the call absolutely categorically. I think they're fighting upstream battle here when they're going in that direction because AJ was, to me, is a guy that you can have as a heel, great heel, and Nakamura more needed the belt, I think. Now as a heel, yeah, you can do some different things, change it up, and you do need some heels on SmackDown, but it just didn't feel like the right time, and I get the motivation for the character to do it when he did it, how he did it, and I thought he did a very effective job, but man, I just couldn't disagree more.
Yeah, but I just think AJ is such a lights-out performer. You can always count on him. He puts everything into every single match every time he goes out there. He's a show stealer. He's dependable. And I don't know. I think I like the heel turn. You can do that next month or the month after, and that could be Nakamura's time to go back to the fact that, both, Asuka and him lost. Yeah, Asuka lost, but I mean, that loss did not hurt her, just like the loss John Cena to The Undertaker didn't mean a bit as far as the legacy or the here and now of John Cena. He just happened to lose a match. So in a loss, Asuka didn't lose nothing. Cena didn't lose anything, and Nakamura gained everything. To me, And I know that you would like to see the title flip there. I'm down with AJ keeping it because I love the heel turn, because I'm hoping that this is a time where Nakamura turns it up and shows us how vicious and nasty he can truly be as the king of strong style. So I'm down with it. And if he ends up taking that title from AJ in the near future, then it will be with, I think, resounding fashion, and then he's off and running. So yeah, flip of the coin there, and I respect your call. But let's move on to the Bar and Braun Strowman and some kid named Nicholas for the Raw Tag Team Championships.
Yeah,
it's been the Braun Strowman thing the other day. A little comical. Braun's been getting over like Rover. A lot of potential. A lot of momentum, a lot of great storylines for him, but the fact that he goes out there in the crowd and just picks some kid, and, it's almost like it's a disservice to, Cesaro and Sheamus, who've been working their asses off. Two physical specimens, have really gotten some chemistry together as a team, not to be taken lightly. And right. Braun's a big guy, but, Cesaro is one of the strongest guys in the locker room. Sheamus is a brute. They can't monetize this person that was picked from the crowd, and I don't know. I wasn't really down with it. So, and then that's with respect to a damn good tag team like the Bar. And then Strowman picks someone, and you're walking a fine line with him, because you have this brute force killer who's legitimately one of the biggest, strongest men in the world, and it didn't do much for me. What did it do for you?
I'd rather have taken Taker out of WrestleMania and had John Cena without an opponent, and then Braun Strowman picks him, they win the titles, and then you can flip them tomorrow, and Cena can go on back to life in Hollywood, or just go in a different direction altogether. But I think through trying to figure out and decode the mind of Vince McMahon, which can be a fascinating journey, I think he was trying to look at it from the child's perspective of a child watching this and saying, hey, look, imagine a WWE superstar. You go to a show, anything's possible. Imagine if Braun Strowman had picked you. You better buy a ticket to the next show. Look, you could end up. I mean, I can see him saying, listen, anything's possible in WWE. Look what just happened. And for children at home, seeing this through the eyes of a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, there's something putting yourself in that role and thinking, wow, imagine that was me. That would be wild. Now, that's one way of looking at it. I think that's how Vince was looking at this. And it's an interesting marketing concept. But to me, the integrity of the match and protecting the business, this one fails the protecting the business test all the way. And I don't like it. It felt weird. Just didn't feel right to me.
Dude, it'd be like, I don't know, one of the top NBA teams right now saying, okay, man, I'm out there sitting in the audience. They're going to play 4 guys. And, hey, you see the ball-headed guy with the goatee over there? He's going to be our 5th man. He's going to play with us. Come on, man. I know it's sports entertainment. There's a lot of creative freedom and leeway there, but you got to protect the integrity of the business to some degree, definitely. So just to pick a random person out of the crowd, on one hand, hey, we got to go because this could be us. I don't know. You're just not giving the other team enough respect, and I'm watching. I'm trying not to watch as a 30-year grizzled vet. I'm suspending my disbelief as a knockdown, drag-out show, hot crowd, and then Braun Strowman is wandering around the arena trying to find a partner to take on this damn good tag team. So we'll move on. Let's talk about Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. Brock Lesnar goes in as a champion. Who knows what's going on with his contract deal? Thought this was going to be his last day, was the word on the street. Roman comes into this thing. Some people just thought the match was so simple with Suplex City, spears, the usual offense that both these guys do. And then, Brock starts taking off those gloves, starts going to the ground and pound, a couple of well-placed elbows to Roman's head. It turns into a bloodbath. It wasn't a real long match. What was the time on this?
This was one of those matches that, we've seen it before. It was Groundhog's Day. I was surprised to see this match end up at clocking at 15:55. That's almost 16-minute match, a very redundant match. F5, 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 right. F5. It was a very one-dimensional outing. The crowd really turned on, and that's probably the takeaway from this match is if you're grooming the guy that's going to follow up John Cena, and he's about to take that mantle, and you've spent now 4 years, really 5 years when you look back and rewind to when they were doing it, when the Shield was going wild. They spent a half a decade getting to right about this moment, and you can hear the crowd just so against it, so hard against it. And it's not just the WrestleMania crowd, and you can say maybe the hardcore crowd. It's the crowd that comes every week. I think had you had that heel turn and had gotten there differently, maybe it would have been possible. But this is one of those, like, let's just keep repeating it and hope if we just make a few alterations, it will get the job done. And sometimes making those adjustments does get the job done. And in this case, it didn't seem like this crowd, or I think really any crowd's going to receive this any better. Roman Reigns took a beating, and I think it's the old, the bayface, just keeps coming back for more, and eventually you're just going to love this guy because he's got all that grit. Well, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen in this case. I just think it's become one of those dynamics where the fans are going to reject this in this presentation in this capacity, and I don't know if it's going to get any better for Roman and a flash title switch, whether it would be on a Monday Night Raw or the next pay-per-view. I don't know if that's going to change it at all. At this point, you really got to consider and realistically change your course and go in a different direction. The closest we saw to the crowd accepting Roman Reigns in the last few years was really the most recent revival of the Shield, which unfortunately, because of Dean Ambrose's injury, got derailed. But I think that was the best shot of going into WrestleMania season with him being received well by the audience was the Shield reunion. They enjoy him in that capacity. They don't seem to enjoy him chasing the belt. I can't remember in all my years of watching wrestling where you're grooming the guy to be the next guy, and half a decade later, you're still trying it, and it's not clicking, and you're still trying it now. It does speak probably a little bit to Vince McMahon's stubbornness, but at the same time, you got to read your crowd, which is always something he would tell me. So you got to listen and read your crowd. And what are they saying right now? They're saying, pass. This ain't it.
Man, I tell you what, the thing that got me about that match was there at the end on the 1, 2, 3, like I said, all the F5s. He keeps kicking out. Man, all of a sudden, Brock goes to work with those elbows, opens him up, and he is a crimson mask. Sometimes there can be, sometimes you can do a little bit too much color with the blade. Now, obviously, this is a hard waste, but it was a little too much blood. Just because it was just almost grotesque. And dude, when I say that, it's too much blood. But nonetheless, it was an effective picture. So, and that's a moot point, actually. I guess the point I'm trying to make is when Brock pinned him for the 1, 2, 3, there was a resounding positive pop rather than a boo. So, people thought Brock was going to ride off in the sunset. Some people were tired of him for being a part-timer. Again, some people are hot and cold on Roman, but when that 1, 2, 3 went down, dude, it wasn't a boo, and there was mixed reactions during the match, because, like I said, it was just F5s. It was the same old, stuff. I mean, some good stuff out there on the desk, outside, brutality. Both guys worked their ass off. I'm not knocking the effort. It was a brutal, effective match to a point, but when Brock got that 1, 2, 3, dude, I mean, the way those people cheered, if you don't think about that, or if that doesn't make you rethink what's going on, I don't know. What was your response?
Well, it made me think back to just as how Vince has really pegged Roman Reigns in this configuration as his guy. What I had a conversation with some of the Samoans about it. Some of his close relatives. I said, well, what's your take? And they throw up something pretty poignant. With the exception of The Rock, Superfly Snuka, and Rikishi, the lion's share of the Samoan, Anoa'i, Fatu family have been heels since the 60s. They've been largely heels and made their money and got over being heels, and they teach their young to be heels. So the babyface thing is not something necessarily that they gravitate towards, and that how they train their talent, their own. And it just seemed to have always been the most effective presentation. And whether it's a more modernized version where you have an Umaga, or you look at the throwback days of Peter Maivia and the Wild Samoans, or a heel Jimmy Snuka, there might be some merit to that just go with what has naturally been the way for almost a half a century. At this point, I would say Roman Reigns would make a phenomenal heel. I think it's an echo chamber of many people in the business and fans at home listening to this would probably agree with that. Where they go with Roman Reigns out of this is going to be interesting. Paul Heyman did a lot of media in the weeks leading up to WrestleMania, talking about, and Paul can be very provocative and like to stir the pot, but talking about how it would be a great pleasure to manage Roman Reigns, and he thinks that would be a great opportunity for Roman Reigns to be managed by him. Of course, Heyman's also looking possibly past WWE on the flip side of this run and doing a TV show, I believe. So, it's an interesting thing, and I think Paul with Roman would be a phenomenal attraction if Brock's going away. And I think WWE and the talent in the locker room and the fans are better off for Paul Heyman to be on their TV more often than not on their TV. I would hate to see us go with a period with no Paul Heyman on TV. He's a great talent. He's a great resource to the locker room and to the office. So I hope coming out of this, whether Brock stays or goes, Paulie stays, and ideally maybe is positioned with Roman Reigns. Who knows? Maybe because he talked about it publicly, it doesn't have a snowball's chance of happening, though.
And we'll see what happens. As we talk, it's Monday Night Raw tonight, and SmackDown's the next day. So we'll see how they further these storylines. And, did Brock decide to stick around? Did he sign another contract? What's the story? How's that going to go down? But overall, I really thought it was a damn good pay-per-view. And
sure,
specifically, Asuka and Charlotte was a standout match of the night as far as just pure in-ring, one-on-one action, championship belt on the line. They nailed it. And then the tag match between Kurt and Ronda versus Triple H and Stephanie, with all the bells and whistles, that badass entrance, Steph and Hunter riding down on the trikes. It was just a great match full of thrills, chills, and excitement. Ronda got all of her stuff in. They featured her. She was absolutely awesome, and the crowd was buying it, and I was laughing my ass off because there were so many changes in directions and all the stuff that they threw at you where you just knew that this was the finish, but it wasn't the finish. And finally, I knew it was going to be, Steph tapping out, and it ended up being Steph tapping out, but it took you 3 or 4 or 5 scenarios for that to get there. And like I said, when we both thought that Triple H was going to tap out,
right,
that would have been lights out, but I like the way they kept carrying it one step further. But swig of beer, and congrats to all the guys and girls. I didn't like the Braun tag match with the kid from the crowd for my personal reasons of being, hey man, that's a badass tag team that you're going against. But and some of the matches I didn't get a chance to see because of the situation in the area that I was in. But I love the event. I love the energy down there in New Orleans, and it seemed to me like everybody had a damn good time.
Yeah, absolutely. A great show. I think if you have a chance to go out for WrestleMania weekend next year in the New York metro market, make it worth your while to do it. There's so much to see, both that the WWE hosts and other companies. It's a real way to celebrate wrestling, binge on wrestling, and you never know. If you're at the right hotel, you happen to go in the bar, you might see the Boogeyman eating worms, you might see Hurricane Helms with his cape, and Stone Cold with a pack of beer, somehow rigging his computer to stream
swinging down
WrestleMania.
Fireballs. Hey, before we ride off to the sunset, I got to go make an appointment. Give some more information about your program.
Sure. Everyone, check out Major League Wrestling. It's coming to national TV Friday, April 20th, 8 p.m. That's on the West Coast and the East Coast, with a replay at 11 o'clock on BN Sports. BN Sports is the fastest growing sports network in the world, and will be on each and every Friday for the foreseeable future. You'll have Tony Schiavone returning to call the action. You have guys like Sami Callihan, Pentagon Jr., Ray Phoenix, MVP, Low Key, some of the next greatest and biggest stars around the world. You'll have guys like Shane Swerve Strickland. You'll have just a who's who from even including the return of Colonel Parker, who's now managing a new stud stable. So you get a little old school mixed in with new school. It's a lot of fun. We have women's wrestling, including Santana Garrett on the show. Check out MLW Fusion. Search it, DVR it, Major League Wrestling Fusion, each and every Friday starting next Friday, April 20th at 8 p.m. And don't you dare miss it.
Court, enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
Thanks, dude.
Catch you down the road.
Good news. For the first time ever, the Adam Carolla Show is in virtual reality. Live Saturday, April 21st. Just a one-time $4.99 subscription, and you can see it on your phone or your computer in virtual 360 reality. You don't need glasses, only a web-enabled device. Experience a live show from the comfort of your own internet. It's not going to air as a regular show, so you can only see it in person Saturday, April 21st, or buy the VR download, and watch on your favorite device. Get it at podcastone.com/Corolla VR. Podcastone.com/Corolla VR.
All right, everybody, give me the go-home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in sunset. Before I do that, I want to thank my guest, Court Bauer of Major League Wrestling. He's got some exciting things going on with his promotion and his television deal. Thank you, Court. It was a pleasure talking to you. I realized as I was kind of looking back over the pay-per-view, hell, we completely forgot to talk about Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax. And this was an okay match. I thought Nia was just going to come out and completely just be a destructive force. And Alexa was really going to have to scramble around on this one. So they put in a little bit of time. A little bit disjointed in some sections. I was glad to see Nia finally win the women's championship, but I thought she would do it in a little bit more of a dominating fashion to really send out that message. And I thought they would just start lining up people to take her on, and she should be a formidable force with that championship belt for quite some time, in my opinion. So it was an okay match. They worked hard, just a little discombobulation in there, and I thought Nia should have just been a little bit more offense with everything that had went down, and also just with the size power difference within the two athletes. So a good match. I mean, they put forth a lot of effort, just didn't kind of connect on a few levels. But I wanted to throw that out there. And then also in hindsight, hell, I forgot to mention that Nita Strauss, Alice Cooper's lead guitarist, played that entrance for Shinsuke Nakamura when he came down, and she's a lights-out guitar player, added a lot to the entrance. She was on the podcast about a year ago, and really enjoyed talking to her. So anyway, I totally botched the fact that we missed Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax. Again, I just thought Nia Jax should just been a little bit more dominant out there and just really sent out a message to the rest of the women's division. All the women performed in a badass fashion on the pay-per-view, as did everybody. I thought everybody had a damn good effort. But anyway, for me to give you guys something to watch, I would tell you to get on the WWE Network and check out WrestleMania 34. There are some outstanding matches. The best one of the night was Charlotte versus Asuka, and the tag team match between Ronda and Kurt and Triple H and Steph. Both different kinds of matches. The tag match was just a big-time show, and that singles match for the women's belt was just an awesome, awesome singles match, and probably the most intense I've seen Charlotte, and I'm a fan of her more as a heel, and Asuka and her really brought it, and just totally great chemistry, and you really couldn't see where the match was going. There were no tells. It wasn't bad magicianship, like you couldn't see where they were going. So I just thought some of the stuff they did was spectacular, and it was a 5-star match, so I dug it the most. Anyway, hey, man, I want to say thank you to all the fine sponsors of the Steve Austin Show, because that's how I'm able to do this podcast for you twice a week for free. You can find all my sponsors at podcastone.com. Just click on the Killer Deals button at the top of the page, and then click on the Steve Austin Show banner. And, folks, I am on social media. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Steve Austin BSR. And until next time, folks, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
President Trump calls it a witch hunt. I'm Jackie Quinn with an AP News Minute. President Trump, while deciding how to respond to an alleged chemical attack on civilians in Syria, denounced the special counsel and federal prosecutors who authorized a raid on his lawyers' offices.
It's a disgrace. It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country.
Michael Cohen has been an ardent defender in Trump's businesses, his personal and political affairs for more than a decade. The Trump administration's announcing new rules for insurance marketplaces under the Affordable Care Act. Consumer advocates say this could whittle away at coverage for people who have serious health problems. Facebook CEO set to testify about users' privacy before Congress, while Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak says he's dropping Facebook.
Zuckerberg buys all the houses around his and all the lots around his in Hawaii for his own privacy. He knows the value of it, but he's not looking after mine.
Stocks closed higher. The Dow gained 46 points. I'm Jackie Quinn.